everybody, and welcome to the Imola circuit, where you find more posers per square metre in the paddock than any other racetrack in the world. It's the 25th running of the San Marino Grand Prix on this wonderfully atmospheric circuit, named after Enzo and Dino Ferrari, whose Maranello headquarters is just a half-hour's drive away in the car. But I imagine that Maranello is going to be a bit of a gloomy place today, because despite coming here with a greatly improved chassis, engine and tyre package this weekend, both Ferrari drivers have had nightmares in qualifying. Michael Schumacher made a huge unforced error this morning in the second qualifying session. He lines up 13th on the grid, while teammate Rubens Barrichello could manage only 9th. So today is a day for the young pretenders to Schumacher's crown. There's Rubens Barrichello, as I mentioned, down in 9th place. But it's the young guns at the front that we will be paying our attention to, certainly to start with. Kimi Raikkonen, looking for his first win of the season. He starts on the front row of the grid in pole position with World Championship leader Fernando Alonso. There he is in the Renault alongside him. The feeling in the paddock after qualifying this morning is that Alonso has a little bit more fuel in his car, which is certainly going to be an advantage. If that is the case, he'll be able to run a lap or two longer in the first stint of the Grand Prix than Raikkonen. But Kimi seems to have the faster race car, particularly in the final stages of the Grand Prix. So it is impossible to call who is going to win this Grand Prix here this afternoon. And here's something else to think about. Jenson Button, he also has a great chance. He starts third on the grid today, but significantly, he has a brand new engine this weekend, whereas Raikkonen and Alonso in front of him are both on engines that have done the Bahrain Grand Prix in all that heat and all that sweat and that fuss. So at some point later in the Grand Prix, they're probably going to have to turn the engine revs down a little bit, whereas I'm told, my information is from Honda, that they have told Jenson to go for it. They reckon they can win this race. And I spoke to one or two technical directors. I said, how much are we talking about here if you'd have to turn the revs down on a car as opposed to not having to? And one or two of them said it's about half a second a lap in the closing stages of the Grand Prix. Now, that might well give Jenson Button a little bit of something to aim for in the final stage of this race if he's in contention. But it's really these three at the front. It's going to be very exciting, isn't it?
It is. We heard that Renault was seriously considering changing Alonso's engine last night, so they are carrying that along and hoping and praying. I think, of course, Jenson's engine problems and along with Takuma Sato, they were very specific problems that they had with those Honda engines when they let go. So quite clearly it wasn't a rev issue. It's only 62% full throttle around here, but no doubt about it, top end power makes a big difference. It's all about heavy acceleration, hard on the brakes, heavy acceleration all the way around the lap.
Well, we had rain this morning about 7:30 while we were having our breakfast. It was raining here at Imola. It hasn't rained since. The track was slightly damp in parts for the 10 o'clock second qualifying session. It's warm outside. The track temperature is 28 degrees, the air temperature 19. One or two of the teams believe there's a chance of rain at 3 o'clock this afternoon, but standing outside, I'd have to say it feels bright and sunny on your back. It's not that likely. And there is Michael Schumacher. You see, just going out of your frame now amongst some fairly undistinguished company for him. A very strange, unforced error this morning in the second qualifying session puts Michael back there, and he'll be very frustrated because on the long runs in pre-practice it showed that the Ferrari is a much faster car than it's been in the first three races.
Yeah, and I think it's got the best turn-in of any car out there. It looks on rails, certainly on fresh tyres. I think Michael ran a bit wide at the top at the Variante Alta, the high chicane. Probably got a bit of damp on his tyres up there, and then steamed into the braking zone for Ravazza, and we saw it being analysed earlier on in the show. Just locked the wheels up, locked them up badly. We're absolutely sure he's not been able to change that tyre. He was not allowed to put a fresh, brand new tyre on. If you do change a tyre, it's got to be one of similar or greater mileage, otherwise you're not allowed to change it unless it's absolutely unsafe. I don't think his would have been unsafe, but it'll certainly be unhelpful. And it's the loaded right front. This is an anti-clockwise circuit. If you start to build understeer because you've got this flat spot on the tyre, it then just compounds up because the understeer generates more understeer. And we've got a Renault slowly off the line. Fisichella just getting away quite slowly, but is away in formation.
Well, this is one of the most open Grand Prix I can remember for a long time in terms of who's actually going to win it here this afternoon. But it's pretty tight as well in the midfield section. There's lots of drivers within fractions of a second of each other throughout practice and both qualifying sessions. So the points-paying positions today are going to be very, very hotly contested. The feeling amongst the team strategists is that most people are going to do more or less the same sort of thing. First pit stops anytime between a lap 18 and about 24, that kind of region. We're expecting most of them to stop twice today. This race was won last year on a 3-stop strategy, but with the new rules for 2005, particularly on the tyres, then the two-race engine rule, that's pushed out a little bit now. We haven't yet had a 3-stop strategy this season. There's a look at the Constructors' Championship, looking good for Renault. Toyota, the form team, coming into this Grand Prix, but it's not been a terrific weekend for them. They seem to have dropped off the pace a little bit. Their car doesn't really like this track. Jarno Trulli is going to line up 5th on the grid after a heroic effort in qualifying, but his teammate Ralf Schumacher down in 10th, and not expecting them to be contesting the victory. But nevertheless, they're here. 62 laps of this 3-mile long Imola circuit then. A total of 189 miles. And at the end of it, will we have our first British winner for 2 years? Will Kimi Raikkonen have his first victory since Spa last year? Or will Fernando Alonso make it 3 in a row?
You can sort of imagine in 4 or 5 years' time talking about these guys we got on the front row, the front 2 rows of the grid today, can't you? They are very much the future of Grand Prix racing. Plus, I'm sure we're going to get some other hot shots coming along too in that period of time. But right now, then, Raikkonen, Alonso, Button, and Webber taking up the first 4 grid slots. Coming in then, Raikkonen backing the pack up. He doesn't want to go and sit on the line with his tyres cooling and his engine beginning to boil. So you have to back the pack up and make sure they get on their grid slot as quickly as you can make them. We used to be timed and we had to do it in under 30 seconds, and that was much fairer for everybody. That one slipped away a little bit, but normally it's about 40 to 45 seconds now that you're waiting at the front of the grid, and that seems like an eternity.
There with Trulli just sliding into 5th place. Mark Webber over to our right. Terrific effort by him in the Williams. No one really expected them to be that far up the grid. He did a great job in qualifying. Alex Wurz in the 2nd McLaren just behind Trulli on the grid. Juan Montoya is not here this weekend, still injured.
Now you want to be on the left. The first left-hander is much shorter, of course. It goes immediately into a left-hand turn, this grid, and you definitely want to be on the inside and the left-hand side, therefore, down into the Tamburello chicane.
And the lights go out. The San Marino Grand Prix will begin. Are you ready? Let's race! Oh, yellow flags at the back. Good start by Raikkonen. Button tucks in behind Alonso. Jarno Trulli's made a good start as well. Looks like he's up in the 4th place, turning into the Tamburello for the first time. Last year, David Coulthard went straight on there, but nobody this year has made a mistake into turn 1. And Kimi Raikkonen has got the break from pole, with Alonso right behind him. Button tucks in 3rd where he started. Trulli's made up a place. Sato looks like he's made up a place as well. And that means it was a poor start for Mark Webber, who is now attacking Sato, going round the outside of him into the Tosa bend. Webber keeps his foot in it. Sato, is he going to have to yield as they go up the hill? The next corner is going to be a left-hander at Peratella. Sato stays there. Webber does go around the outside. Brave driving by Mark Webber. He's back up.
Good stuff there. Takuma should not have let him have that one. He definitely had track position. It almost looked like he was about to be an aborted start there with the yellow flags waving and the light sequence not looking quite correct from what I could see. But quite clearly the drivers all saw it that way. But there were definitely yellow flags waving on the grid. But all cars are away. Raikkonen leads from Alonso, Button, Trulli, Sato, Webber, Wurz up to 7th, Villeneuve up to 8th. He's had an absolute flyer.
Certainly has. It was difficult to see the start because that 62 lap graphic you can see in the middle of your screens was masking the lights, which is a bit of a problem, so I certainly couldn't see the lights going out. Had to rely on the cars moving, but we'll have another look at the restart, a replay of it hopefully, and see what those yellow flags were all about. Across the line at the end of lap 1, Kimi Raikkonen leads Alonso by 2 seconds. Button is 3rd, Trulli is 4th, Webber is 5th, having passed Sato, who's down to 6th. Wurz is 7th, Villeneuve 8th, Barrichello is 9th, where he started on the grid. 10th is Heidfeld, 11th Fisichella, Ralf Schumacher is 12th, Michael Schumacher is where he started in 13th place, but the big news in the Red Bull Racing camp is that the rookie in his first Grand Prix, Tonio Liuzzi, has jumped David Coulthard off the start line. He's up to 14th and Coulthard is down to 15th.
Oh, what a first lap from Raikkonen, a full 2 seconds advantage. He's made another half second on the opening first sector of this lap. He's just romping off into the distance. And I think that'll be confirming to others who suspect that he's very light on fuel. But McLaren told me they're comfortable and confident with their fuel level. So maybe he's just absolutely on it, flying.
Yeah, comfortable is a word you hear a lot from the lips of senior McLaren employees and management. And it can mean anything from we're sitting on a knife edge through to we've been too conservative here this weekend. We will find out when Raikkonen and Alonso and Button make their first stops, but it certainly looks the pace at the moment is pretty electric from Raikkonen. Alonso keeping in touch though, Button keeping in touch with Fernando Alonso at the end of the second lap. And remember, Button is good here. He finished second last year to Michael Schumacher, led the opening stint of the Grand Prix, having started the race from pole position. And this is one of the racetracks that he really loves, and he always goes well here. But a quick word for Trulli behind him. You can see holding on in 4th place. And as I was saying, it was a slow start to the weekend for Toyota. Not particularly happy with the car. Couldn't really find the grip in the slow and medium speed corners that they wanted. But on race day, Trulli is looking very racy. He's lapping the same pace as Button and Alonso in front of him.
So 2.6 second gap, then Alonso now needs to close it straight down, and he's much faster than he had been in the first sector of this lap 3. He knows he cannot afford to let Raikkonen get a cushion like that. And Button, they're strung out quite quickly, aren't they? I think it's to do with the aerodynamics this year. The drivers are all complaining to a man how difficult it is. And yeah, there was waved yellow. Somebody didn't get away from the very back of the field. Don't know who that was, but clearly the light system was absolutely fine. You're right, Jan. We just couldn't see it underneath the graphics on the TV screen. And this is how Jarno Trulli made it past Mark Webber. Remember, Mark Webber said, I want to get to the inside straight away when he spoke to me on the grid, and he knew he had to do that because it's just so much shorter on the inside line.
I think it was Felipe Massa who qualified a spectacular 8th this morning, but because of an engine change, he had to drop 10 places back on the grid. So he was 18th on the grid, and it was him on the pit wall side who didn't get away very quickly. He has got away though. Massa running in 17th at the moment, so just a slight overreaction from the man with the yellow flags, I think, more than anything else.
It was interesting actually to see Massa practicing his start going to the grid when they normally want to save the transmission and certainly save the fuel. So they were obviously expecting after that engine change that they had some kind of setup problem with the clutch, probably the clutch bite point.
Well, we're looking at the race leader who's trying to build that lead, 2.7 seconds over Alonso at the end of the last lap. But a little bit further back in the battle for 12th place, we've got Ralf Schumacher, who is right in front of his brother Michael, who's trying to get past him. And at the moment is finding it pretty tough business. This is the 4th lap that Michael's been trying to get past his brother, and no way through at the moment. Difficult track to pass on this one, isn't it, Martin?
It is, despite all the big braking zones. You've got to be close enough coming out of the previous chicane to do something about it, and that's the tough bit. It's not out braking the other driver, it's getting close enough in the first place to be in with a reasonable shout of it. But Jenson Button in 3rd place is going to be thinking, wait for me guys, I'm supposed to be part of this race today. And these two are absolutely flying. Raikkonen a new fastest lap on a 23.3, Alonso a 23.6, Button a 24.9. That's the kind of pace. Jenson Button now 7 seconds adrift on lap 5 of Raikkonen.
Well, whatever benefit his engine might give him, his new engine might give him later in the race, the raw pace of the chassis doesn't really seem to be there at the moment at this early stage of the Grand Prix. Jenson, I spoke to him just before the race. He said he was very comfortable with his strategy. He's going to wait and see what the two in front of him did. But certainly at the moment he hasn't got the speed. He's over a second, 1.3 seconds a lap slower than Alonso in front of him, and being dropped. Trulli behind him though is not a particular threat at the moment. Trulli about 7/10 now slower than Jenson Button. Mark Webber is 10 seconds behind the race leader. But what's interesting here as we cut to look at Rubens Barrichello in 9th place is this track, it does get strung out very early on. I remember last year, the guys that qualified 4th and 5th, after the first round of pit stops, they were about 25, 26 seconds behind the race leader. It's very, very difficult to make up time here.
Yes, but they seemed so much closer than this on outright lap performance. But remember, the heavy rain overnight, we've had a Porsche race with harder tyres and heavier cars. We've had the GP2 race won by Adam Carroll this morning, a completely harder and different tyres as well. And so these drivers are still trying to find out where the grip is. And you know, some of them are going to have much better setups than others for what is a new track condition that's just 28 centigrade on the track, 19 ambient. So completely different conditions to what they've had the last 2 or 3 races and even yesterday afternoon.
Should just explain, GP2 is the new Formula 3000, if you like. It's the series below Formula 1. Some very promising young drivers in that. Adam Carroll won the race. Oh, and that's one of the Renaults has gone off. Is that Alonso or is it Fisichella? It's Giancarlo Fisichella who's gone off. And we've got yellow flags from 11th place. Fisichella's not having a great time, is he? Here we are, see what happened.
Oh, how's he going to lose that coming out of... That's strange. No, that's strange. Wow, you can't believe how easily the suspension breaks, can you? But I'm really not sure how he got over there. It's almost like he had a left rear puncture or something, because that is a very curious accident for Giancarlo Fisichella.
It certainly is. It's not really going very well for him. He won from pole the Australian Grand Prix, but since then it's been downhill all the way. He's retired in Malaysia, retired in Bahrain, and here again, San Marino, he retires while his teammate leads the World Championship and is definitely getting the upper hand in the Renault squad at the moment. End of lap 6, just over 3 seconds the gap. Alonso pegged it on that last lap. That was his fastest lap of the race so far, and the first time in the race that he's been faster than Raikkonen on a single lap. Then Button is 3rd, still being dropped by about a second a lap. Trulli 4th, Webber 5th, and Sato is in 6th place at the moment. With the Sauber of Felipe Massa down in 15th place after having to take that 10th-place drop on the grid when he changed his engine on Friday night. There you can see David Coulthard just in front of him in 14th with Tonio Liuzzi, his teammate, making his Grand Prix debut just in front of Coulthard on the racetrack. So we didn't see how Liuzzi got Coulthard, but that's quite impressive for a young guy to take an experienced guy on his first Grand Prix to pass him.
Yes, I don't think they'd have been caught up with Massa, because Massa was, with his 10th-place drop for the engine change, was behind the pair of them. But we didn't see that far back down, did we, going into the first corner, just what was going on. It's not unusual, as you're all fumbling around in the back. You have to brake so early for turn 1 when you start in the second half of the field. Coulthard now having to start get defensive against Massa, and Massa's going to have a go up the inside, but you've got to be virtually alongside to outbrake somebody into Rivazza 1.
Well, you can see Massa feels he has a quicker car than the Red Bull in front of him. We've got a few little scraps developing through the field. Webber and Sato are having a good ding-dong for 5th place. Sato's lapping, a pair of them lapping in the mid 1 minute 25s, whereas Jenson Button is in the low 1 minute 24. So you've got to believe that BAR of Sato's is a quicker car than it's being able to show at the moment. And obviously having to deal with Felipe Massa is costing Coulthard a little bit. Liuzzi just opening up 1.5 seconds over him on that last lap, the gap. It's a very dynamic start then for Kimi Raikkonen. Alonso saw him steal 2 seconds off him on that opening lap, and it's gone out to 3, but since it's gone out to 3, Alonso's been able to peg it, and this is lap 8 now. Just looking a bit further down the field, Alex Wurz in the sister McLaren is in 7th place. He's lapping 2.3 seconds a lap slower with Kimi Raikkonen at the moment, so I wonder what strategy he's on. Lap 9 of the San Marino Grand Prix. You join us live, and it looks to me as though Kimi Raikkonen's got a problem. That's Fernando Alonso, who's just gone past him. Raikkonen set an electric pace off the start line. And, well, he was 2 seconds ahead at the end of lap 1. But Kimi Raikkonen, just as you rejoined us, suddenly started to slow down. Well, McLaren have managed to get both their cars to the finish of all 3 Grand Prix so far this season. The director is having a look at Alonso. We're not seeing what's going on with Raikkonen. I'd like to have a look at that because clearly he lost drive. We've also got a Minardi that's crawling down the pit straight. There is Raikkonen. Thank you, Mr. Director. So one of the Minardis is in trouble on the pit straight. But this is the big headline news. Kimi Raikkonen is in trouble after just 8 laps this Grand Prix. Here it is.
No sign of any smoke, didn't go off the road, so you'd have to assume some kind of drive or transmission problem would be my first guess at what's going on with Raikkonen, but quite clearly losing a bundle of time. Ted, have you got any news for us?
They are absolutely gutted down here at McLaren. They're going to try and clear a space in the garage, although they don't think Kimi's going to make it back here, but that's pole and a possible win out the window. They think it probably was the drive shafts, because he wasn't complaining of any problems on the radio to engineer Steve Hallam. Unlike Fisichella, by the way, he was on the radio to his engineer. He clearly had a handling problem before his retirement.
Well, he's dropping down the field. Everybody's just about past him now, and that's the Minardi. Frizzaka out of the Grand Prix. That's a replay down the pit straight. He'll just put himself in at the end of the pit wall.
And that's the debut for that new Minardi PS05. The guys at Faenza just down the road here, Minardi's base, have worked very hard to get that new car ready for this Grand Prix. Only one of them still running then in the hands of Christian Albers. It's been a difficult weekend for Minardi to get the car stabilised, to try and get it out on the track with so little time to prepare it and no time to test it. But it's the first new Minardi for 3 years. That's in trouble. Not as much trouble as this one. Kimi Raikkonen, not for the first time, retires from the lead of a Grand Prix. And he's only got 7 World Championship points at the moment to Alonso's 26. Alonso is now leading this Grand Prix. Who would put money on him not winning it? And that means that Raikkonen's championship, like Michael Schumacher's championship, Schumacher is mired on just 2 points at the moment. Neither of them looking particularly healthy. It's looking great for Alonso. It's also looking good for this man, Jenson Button, running in second, as he did 12 months ago here at San Marino. And he's got a brand new engine. We know that Alonso's concerned about his engine, but it must be a lovely feeling for him when you know you've only got one more car in front of you.
It's invigorated him as well. He suddenly started going very nicely, but he was still half second slower than Alonso on that lap, although Jenson really picking up the pace, and the two of them are way clear of anybody else. Without doubt, further down the field, Wirtz in the second McLaren was 2 seconds a lap slower than Raikkonen. The second cars that are back in the pack, and many of them tucked up behind Jarno Trulli, who's now up to P3. There's quite a long queue forming behind him.
Certainly is. He was on the pace in the opening laps, but just recently he's about 0.8 of a second a lap slower than Button. You can see the queue behind him. Webber is there in 4th. Sato is 5th. Wirtz is 6th in the McLaren. 7th is Villeneuve, and 8th Barrichello. They are all within 3 seconds of Trulli, the third place man. So I told you it'd be tight in the midfield. You certainly weren't kidding. Ted Kravitz, what can you tell us?
I'm still deep within the McLaren garage. I've got to keep my voice down because Kimi Raikkonen, absolutely furious, has just jumped out of the car. He threw his steering wheel right across the garage. It almost went into the next garage, and he's absolutely furious. But I can tell you, I caught a look at the drive shafts, and both of them were still turning. Both rear drive shafts, both attached to the rear wheels and still turning. So it's looking more like something like transmission or even electrical.
It's not a case of the Iceman cometh, it's a case of the Iceman cracketh, I think. Raikkonen throwing his steering wheel, that's strong stuff.
Yeah, but he's a young man that expects to win a number of world championships, and his chances are ebbing away. If you look at his points per start, his wins per start, poles per start and all that, he's better than his statistics look, and he knows that it's days like today where he's got the speed, got the skill, and it's been taken away from him. A lot of frustration, and I can understand that fully.
Remember 2003 when he had a great start to the championship. Michael Schumacher was a long way behind him. He put down the engine blowing up at the Nürburgring that year. Do you remember when he was leading the race? That was the reason why he believes he didn't win the World Championship in 2003, and who knows, he might well feel the same about today, because that was it was certainly looking very good for him before that failure.
And the way the point system is now, with the 10, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 for the top 8 positions, it heavily penalises did not finish DNFs, doesn't it?
Certainly does. So let's have a look at the picture then. What's the landscape look like on lap 12 of 62 here at Imola? Alonso leading by 9.1 seconds from Jenson Button. That last lap, a 23.3 for Alonso, a 23.9 for Jenson Button. So he's just building that lead steadily. Trulli is third. We're looking at that scrap behind him then. They're 18 seconds behind the race leader. And Trulli lapping in the low 1 minute 25, so 1.7 seconds a lap slower than Alonso. Trulli, Webber, Sato, Wurz, Villeneuve, Barrichello crossing the line almost together. Heidfeld, Ralf Schumacher with his brother Michael still tucked up behind him, still unable to pass, and now 28 seconds behind Alonso after just 12 laps of this Grand Prix, and that is a pit stop in your pocket as far as Alonso's concerned.
Villeneuve having a good race. We've given him a hard time when he was driving very badly, and he certainly has been, but this weekend he's been on the pace, hasn't he? And he's hanging on to that pack without any difficulty. 7th place then, just 1.1 seconds behind Wurz, having his first Grand Prix for McLaren since 2000. What a strange feeling that must have been, going down into turn 1. He hasn't driven anything else either, to my knowledge, in that time. He's just been a very loyal test driver. And I spoke to Pedro Della Rosa on the grid, who drove so brilliantly, as we saw back in Bahrain. I said, I kind of feel sorry for you a bit, but what do you think? He said, I think the team had a moral obligation to Alexander to give him a shot here this weekend, and that's fair enough, which is very, very sporting of him.
Certainly is. We're expecting Montoya, who's got a broken bone in his shoulder, to come back at the Spanish Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time in Barcelona, when McLaren are promising a much faster car. They've got a lot of aerodynamic parts and other electronic parts coming on the car, and their big step, their big upgrade is scheduled for Barcelona. So if you thought they were quick here, you wait till you see them in Barcelona in 2 weeks' time. Wurz, though, as you say, he knows these cars so well. In his years since the end of 2000, when he joined McLaren, he's done over 50,000 miles of testing for McLaren. It really is an enormous workload that he's put in.
Talking of Montoya, I wouldn't want to be hanging on to a Formula 1 car around Barcelona of all racetracks with a dodgy shoulder, so we'll have to wait and see if he makes it back. I bet there'll be some pain going on.
Well, there certainly will, because apparently one of the problems is the bone's cracked. Healing that isn't so much a problem, but he's got a kind of muscle wastage, because the shoulder has been immobilised for the last 3 weeks, so inevitably he's going to have to build the strength back up in that. And as you say, the G-forces in Barcelona are as high as anywhere, aren't they?
Yeah, he's pretty rocky though, isn't he? He's a strong old boy, so of all the drivers, he's the one that would probably most get away with that.
Certainly would. There's a very funny banner up here, actually, this corner where we are now, Variante Alta. You won't see it because it's just underneath the camera. It says, Montoya, see you in Wimbledon. Supposedly a tennis accident that sidelined the Colombian. There are some other theories about it in the paddock, but that's what he's saying. That's his story, and he's sticking to it.
Right, are they 3 stopping or are they 2 stopping? What's going on in that pack now that Trulli is reversing into? They're all thinking, okay, right, I just hope I'm doing 1 or 2 more laps faster than these guys, as Barrichello firmly joins the queue as well there now. He's thinking, right, I just hope I'm doing 1 or 2 more laps, I'll banzai that, and I should get an advantage over at least the person in front of me, and maybe a couple of these guys.
Well, it's interesting because Takuma Sato jumped 4 places after the first qualifying session, and during the second session he went from 10th at the end of first qualifying to 6th on the grid. There he is, Takuma Sato, and certainly the feeling is that he would have to have taken a little bit of fuel out to achieve that, so he may well be the first of these guys we're looking at now to make his stop. He's stuck behind Mark Webber, who in turn is stuck behind Trulli, but it's a long game this, and Webber, spoke to him yesterday after qualifying, seemed pretty comfortable with the way things were going in his classic way that Mark is. He was asked by one of the journalists, what was it, about the Williams package, what was it that made the difference today? And he goes, good driving, mate.
He was giving me a bit of a slap on the grid, wasn't he, because I blamed him for the incident in Malaysia, which I still do, by the way. And Alonso then just gone over the line in a 23.7, and Button goes over in a 1 minute 23.5, the gap down to 9.2. This is a 2-horse race, and none of them are painted red and prancing. Ted has some news.
I've just been into BAR. I'll tell you what, they're delighted with Button's pace. I mean, the last lap was half a second quicker than Alonso. This one, Alonso's pulled it back to 2 tenths, as you say, Martin. But they think he can close this 9.2 gap. They're very, very buoyant down here at BAR.
Well, he's certainly in the race, and if he's got a good fuel load on board, but I'm pretty sure so does the Renault. But Jensen is not out of this race at all. He's got a fresh motor anyway. We think we know that Alonso might just be having to nurse his. Long way to go in this race, and tyre wear will become a factor by the end. Yes, this circuit is not as heavy on tyre wear as some others, but that means they'll just go softer on the compound and stretch the margin that way.
It's a lot cooler here than it was in Malaysia or Bahrain as well. The Renault seemed to handle its tyres pretty well. But, certainly Jenson Button is a very, very smooth driver, so if there's going to be a race where his smoothness will protect the tyres, this could well be it. Certainly it's game on as far as the win is concerned. It's still wide open at the front between Alonso and Button. We're riding on board with Mark Webber. We've just exited the Variante Alta, the high chicane. One of the Renault mechanics indicating that it's all a bit easy at the moment, but you wait and see, mate. There's a long way to go in this Grand Prix. There's your top 8. Barrichello into the points. Ferrari need to salvage something from this Grand Prix. At the moment, Barrichello 6th in the World Championship with just 8 points. Michael Schumacher 14th with just 2 points. So they really need to get their championship started. They were banking on this being the race because on paper at least it looked like the most competitive Grand Prix for Ferrari of the season so far. It's just not happening for them.
Michael's been about 7 tenths behind his brother. They're 10th and 11th, and just hasn't moved. Whether he's not got a great deal of interest this afternoon, or whether he's just into that, which I suspect more, into that turbulent air. What is that? Looks like a bit of Petronas Sauber to me that was upside down on the side of the road. So Massa has come in the pits. It is indeed, I suspect, Massa had a go at Coulthard, and that's a bit of yes, his right front wing look. So I would think he had a nibble at Coulthard somewhere around the track.
Bit of frustration there as well for Felipe Massa. Got a poor start, as we saw, having had to take the 10th place drop on the grid. His day started quite well, and it's got steadily worse, despite qualifying 8th, then took the 10th place drop down to 18th. Then he got a poor start. Now he's hit Coulthard. It's going to be one of those Keystone Cops afternoons for Felipe Massa, I feel.
I didn't see it, but I'm being told that he was gesticulating to the Red Bull crew as he went past as well. So, oh, look at that. Ferrari are going to be first in for gas as well. Wow, that's surprising.
May well be, because Michael is tucked up behind his brother Ralph. Now it's Rubens Barrichello, so that's interesting. Barrichello pits from 8th. They're just testing the tyres. You can see the man just running around the back there. They're not allowed to change them in 2005. They can just look at them, change the tyre pressures if they want, but I think McLaren and Kimi Raikkonen will tell you that adjusting tyre pressures in a pit stop is not always a good idea. You remember how his valve broke in Malaysia, putting him out of the Grand Prix when he looked certain to get 2nd place. Yet more in the catalogue of woes of Raikkonen, who has already retired from this Grand Prix. This is lap 18.
They look like they were maybe just taking a temperature scan and collecting data. They've got some work to do, haven't they? No doubt about it, Bridgestone. But yeah, in there with a temperature probe. I can't believe it would be a short hardness thing, or I'm trying to understand much more, or a tread depth. They should better work that one out in terms of the profile of the tyre wear and tyre degradation. So I can only assume they were looking for temperatures.
Well, it's not all over yet for Barrichello and Michael Schumacher. They are now in the high-speed train, which is built up behind Jarno Trulli. The front two have broken away. Alonso's 8 seconds clear of Button, who on that last lap took another half second out of the Renault driver. So Button is eating into that margin. But the gap behind them is 15 seconds to this one of Trulli. And just look at all these cars, all in a high-speed queue. Villeneuve's in there as well. Barrichello is a second behind Villeneuve. Heidfeld, Ralf Schumacher and Michael Schumacher. So whichever one of them blinks first pit stop wise, then the rest are going to move forward.
Mark Webber trying to get rid of a rip-off from his visor, so whether he's getting a bit of water or other fluids, he's probably fed up now. He's 19 laps into this race, and Trulli just beat him off the line, of course. That cost him dearly.
Well, I mentioned that Toyota with a form team coming into this Grand Prix.
Barrichello pits again. There then is Massa and DC down at Rivazza 1. Well, I said earlier on, you've got to be at least alongside if you're going to have a go down there. And it didn't look like he was. Rubens Barrichello is going to retire from the Grand Prix. Wow, we really thought this Ferrari was going to be better this weekend, didn't we? And well, that just leaves Michael in the hunt then. He's currently 10th now.
It's interesting, we saw Barrichello having problems, reliability issues with the gearbox in Bahrain on this new Ferrari. That was its debut. This is only its second Grand Prix. They've done over 5,000 miles of testing since Bahrain for Ferrari, looking for reliability and performance as well. It looked like they'd found certainly the performance, but I hear a whisper that Barrichello had to change his gearbox, which has been the Achilles heel of this car. On Friday, they kept it quiet. It certainly wasn't announced by Ferrari that they'd done that. One of my Italian colleagues told me that. And so it seems as though all is not well with this Ferrari in terms of reliability, and it's been their benchmark for so many years now.
Right, the race is starting to come alive. Button is closing the gap to Fernando Alonso, down to 8.6 seconds. Button's just set the fastest first sector time of anybody so far in the previous 19 laps of this Grand Prix. And then third, all the way through to 7th, with Villeneuve absolutely nip and tuck, and they'll be waiting for either a driver error or for the pit stops.
Well, we're certainly getting into the pit stop window now. We saw Barrichello come in for fuel. Not sure whether that was scheduled or they were just checking something, but certainly the second time was for retirement. We are into the pit stop window anytime between now and about lap 24, 25. A few just spots there on the camera lens. I wonder if that's a little bit of moisture coming out of Trulli's car or a little moisture in the air.
Well, we did say, didn't we, that Mark was busy trying to clean his visor, so maybe Victoria's just putting a little bit of water out the back. And Button just done a new fastest lap of the race at 23.1. It only took another 10th out of Alonso, but he's pushing hard now. I hope that's not a sign he's about to make his pit stop.
Well, it might well be, but it's certainly a sign that he intends to push Alonso here this afternoon. Remember, off the line he was third, Alonso second, and Raikkonen first in the opening exchanges. And he let them get away from him a little bit. Now he's trying to close the gap down again. But as I said at the top, he has got a brand new Honda engine in this car because he retired from the last Grand Prix, and that means he can take a new engine for this one. Whereas Alonso, who won the last Grand Prix in Bahrain, has to use the same engine again. And that may well end up being telling towards the end of the race. It means that Honda can turn the wick up, maximum attack, maximum power for Jensen. They want race wins this season. They're not particularly bothered where they finish in the World Championship. They want to win some races, and I think they're targeting this one as a possible.
8 cars then are within 6 seconds of Jarno Trulli, and Button's on an absolute flyer out there. He's currently 0.8 of a second faster halfway around this lap than Alonso, and Luis has found the Renault driver, Giancarlo Fisichella.
Carlo, that didn't look to us like a mistake on your part. Looked like it was more some kind of issue with the car. Is that right?
Yeah, honestly, we are now investigated to find what happened. I was behind Einfield. I completely lost the control of the car. There is something wrong. I don't know what happened. I'm really disappointed. Another bad weekend. This is the third race without score points for the championship. I'm really disappointed, but we are good. We have a good package, and I can do well for the next one. Yeah.
Great racing here between Sato and Webber. Sato pinches 4th place off Mark Webber. Looked like Webber came back at him. And look at Wirtz. He's trying to find his way through, and so is Jacques Villeneuve. 5th, 6th, 7th all together, trying to take advantage of Sato's boldness. Pit stops coming up. Track position vital.
The lead is down to 7.3 seconds, and Button on another flyer, already half second up on this lap. But we're watching this amazing scrap. I suspect Webber made a slight error coming out of the final corner, and that gave Sato the run he needed. And really, I thought Mark would be the one most likely to overtake. There he goes, Sato really in the perfect slipstream. Maybe he just turned his revs up a little bit, and the braking line into the corner. Mark tried to go back around the outside, but he knew there was no hope of that and came under further pressure himself. Sato then moves beautifully up to 4th place. Button does another new fastest lap of the Grand Prix. That is a replay, I believe, of that incident, and Webber then coming under extreme pressure from Wirtz, but Wirtz couldn't make it stick.
Yeah, they do have a kind of overtake button as Trulli dives into the pits, and so does Webber. Sato released They haven't overtake Button on the BAR Honda, so Sato obviously using a few more revs there just down the straight to get that slipstream on the Williams, who couldn't defend it. Webber pits, so does Trulli. Webber would dearly like to get back out in front of Trulli here. It's a pit stop race for the mechanics. How much fuel's going in? Watch out for Webber coming over the right shoulder of these mechanics. Not quite. Another quarter of a second faster on the pit stop for Williams, and that's a sinking feeling you can hear from Mark Webber as he looks at the back of that Toyota wing one more time. Sato, remember, has been released. It's a BAR 2-3 here at Imola, yet to score a World Championship point in 2005, but they're running second and third, Button and Sato. And Ralf Schumacher has pitted as well. That's released Michael Schumacher, so watch out for his lap times in the next few laps as the race leader comes into the pits. This is where Button must attack now. He must attack.
Yes, he's too far behind to make the difference, but the good news is that Button has gone at least as far as Alonso, which means he's at least as fast as him. So Button then, does he pit on this lap? Alonso, he's continued, so he had even more fuel on board. Great news, we've got a race on our hands.
We certainly have. The last lap not brilliant from Jensen, unfortunately. A 1:23.4, so about 7 or 8 tenths slower than those record-breaking laps he was doing just in the run-up to that. This needs to be a good one though from Jensen. Sato pits. BAR mechanics ready for Takuma Sato. In he comes from third place then. Villeneuve has pitted as well from sixth. It's all happening down there in the pit lane. Load of fuel going into that BAR Honda. That'll take him quite deep into the Grand Prix. But when is Button going to pit, and how much of a gap can he make up on Alonso in this time that he's got allowed now? If he can go a couple of laps and really put the hammer down, he can put himself into contention here for the race win.
Michael Schumacher does a fastest first sector. Look, and they're just all rejoining in the pack there. And that Villeneuve tucking in between the two Red Bull Racings, whereas his competitors managed to just clear that. You can see, although they're full of fuel, you can see Trulli and Webber managed to get out in front of the Red Bulls, who are yet to stop. But crucially, Michael Schumacher's just done the fastest first sector, and he's still out there on his initial load of fuel, and now he's done the fastest middle sector. It's suddenly playing into Michael's hands to get him up into the points, and Button pits. Ted is there.
And they're adjusting the pressures on the front tyres, just a small adjustment. The stop going well otherwise, enough fuel for a two-stop strategy. And that's a great stop from BAR, 9.6 seconds. Alonso's was 8.9, so a bit longer for Button.
Yep, Alonso's gone down the main straight to resume the lead. Michael Schumacher is on target to set the fastest lap of this Grand Prix so far, but the problem for him is when he makes his stop, a 1:22.2 it is for Michael Schumacher. When he makes his stop, he's going to rejoin behind Sato, Villeneuve. The crucial thing for Schumacher is to get out in front of Jarno Trulli, if he can do it. Depends how long he stays out now. This is crucial for Schumacher.
Yes, he's just behind Alexander Wirtz, who also has yet to stop, so he did a great job in qualifying too. We don't know how far his teammate was going, because of course Raikkonen has broken down with suspected transmission problems, and he's out of the Grand Prix. But crucial stages then. Michael Schumacher's got a great chance here to leapfrog several cars. So has Wirtz.
Absolutely, because they were all so close together, there was such small margins between them, and he's now free and he's liberated to try and do some lap times. He's going to run into Wirtz fairly soon, of course, but here in fact he is kept running into Wirtz. But this is an important part of the race for Michael Schumacher. He's going to get anything out of it here this afternoon. Fastest first sector of all for him. Now he's caught up with Wirtz, and he's not setting that same blistering pace anymore.
They have tripped over each other before, haven't they, in Monaco when Wirtz was a Benetton driver. Or was it Renault then? I can't remember. I think it was Benetton, wasn't it?
Yep, they have tripped over each other. That's good news for Michael, isn't it? Wirtz pits. Schumacher continues. He's going a long way into this race, Michael Schumacher, on the fuel with which he qualified. 26 laps now. We are on lap 26. Into the pits comes Wirtz. You can see Red Bull Racing there, getting ready for their drivers. Liuzzi has not stopped. Coulthard has not stopped either. Liuzzi up to 8th then on his Grand Prix debut as Wirtz makes his exit. Villeneuve sandwiching those two Red Bull Racings in 9th place.
And who was that coming along? It was Sato, wasn't it? So Wirtz has got ahead of Sato, and that means Schumacher may well leapfrog the lot of them, because Sato was the one lined up next to overtake Trulli. Can and indeed can Michael Schumacher go as far as leapfrogging Trulli. So really coming into play for Schumacher at the moment. That's going to be fascinating when he goes out. He's still absolutely flying. A bit of a tweak on the front wing for Coulthard. We don't know which way, but obviously to try to improve the balance of that car. Here then is Schumacher.
Yep, on target for the fastest lap of the race so far. You heard Ross Brawn telling Ted Kravitz before the start, let's see what happens when the pit stops start. Michael will be in great shape then. He wasn't wrong. Michael's in fantastic shape now, on target to get it out in front of Wirtz and maybe out to front of Sato. What about Wirtz? We'll have to wait and see. But this is going to jump Michael Schumacher well up the order.
No wonder they were gutted when he went off on his hot lap. How much fuel was there? They knew how much fuel he got on board, and he was still looking very much on target to be in the top two rows of the grid. And this is why De Montezemolo went out the back of the pits, and everybody was in despair. They had a great package out there than when Michael outbraked himself into Rivazza.
Michael's just done a 1:22.070, fastest lap of the race so far. That's 1.3 seconds slower than the fastest lap from last year, to give you some idea of how much the new rules for 2005 have slowed the cars down. But more crucially, this is lap 27. He's already gone 4 laps longer than Fernando Alonso, and now he's closing up behind the BAR. Jenson Button.
Button, of course, will have has got extra fuel on board. It's his position. He'll not be letting Michael through easily. Surely Michael's got to come in soon. But Button will try and hold him up as long as he can. I think Michael's going to end up P3 when this first round of pit stops are finished.
Well, he's P3 at the moment. Button is second. Alonso is leading. The Ferrari mechanics are out in the pit lane for Michael Schumacher. So there we are, you see. He's due in any time now, and that means he's going to drop back about 20 seconds off the back of Jenson Button. But he's shown in just this brief interlude that this Ferrari is very, very quick. Rotten luck in qualifying. A mistake by him has really cost him here today.
I would imagine they brought him in even if it wasn't the right moment, even if he could have gone another lap or two, because quite clearly he was going to lose time behind Button. He's not really racing Jenson Button. He's racing the rest of that pack that were tucked up behind Jarno Trulli, because Alonso and Button were too far out front. The gap is now 9.1 seconds. Where does he feed back into the racetrack? Way ahead of him, doesn't he?
Alex Wirtz is coming down the main straight. Schumacher is up to speed. He has jumped Sato and Wirtz. There goes Wirtz in the background. So that was a super stop, a super stint by Michael Schumacher.
And Trulli's behind Sato anyway, so Michael Schumacher does come out in a net third place, and so does Alexander Wirtz into fourth.
So that's an incredible moment for Michael Schumacher. The Tifosi love it. Let me explain to you what happened here. He's just gone from 12th to 3rd by staying longer on the fuel. It's really worked for Michael Schumacher, and he's now on the rampage here at Imola. Alonso leads, Button is second, Michael Schumacher is third, and it's game on at Imola. Well, that was certainly a spectacular illustration of the advantage of being able to carry a little bit more fuel in second qualifying. If you can still get a lap time out of the car and get yourself a reasonable way up the grid, carrying the more fuel, you can see how many cars you can jump. That's because all those cars were so concertina together. It gave Schumacher an opportunity. He'll thank Jarno Trulli for that. Everybody backed up behind Trulli. Schumacher up to third then, 31 seconds behind race leader Alonso, but with an empty track in front of him and 34 laps in which to try and close down the gap to Jenson Button and Fernando Alonso. Button now 9.7 behind, as you can see, so just 22 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher with 34 laps to go, and we'll be monitoring their lap times very closely.
So what's Button lost? He's lost 3 seconds really since the final phase, hasn't he, of the first round before they refueled. And once again, on heavier tanks, he's quite a bit slower than Alonso. Sato will be scratching his head. He'll wonder how he ended up so far behind, won't he? He's a full 6 seconds behind. Michael Schumacher, a man who was 4 or 5 places behind him not so long ago.
Absolutely, he did 2 laps less on the fuel basically than Alex Wurz. That's certainly a big part of the story, and he did 4 laps less than Michael Schumacher. It just shows you what an advantage it is if you can carry a bit more fuel in qualifying. There's Jensen, lapping in the mid 1 minute 24s. Michael Schumacher though, that last lap a 1:22.7 with a full load of fuel.
Yeah, and I tell you what, he's only 20 seconds behind Jensen. If he carries on at that rate of knots, he will bring himself up to the back of at least Jensen, if not Alonso.
Mesmerising pace from Michael Schumacher. He's just taken on a load of fuel and he's done a lap 1.7 seconds faster than the 2 guys leading this Grand Prix. Approaching half distance in this 25th San Marino Grand Prix, and Michael Schumacher, he's won it 6 times already, looking for a 7th win. It was a tall order after he qualified down in 13th place, but as a result of brilliant pit strategy, he stayed out longer than most of his rivals and has gone from 12th up into 3rd place. He's got an empty track in front of him, and at the moment his last lap was a 1:22.7 with a full load of fuel in the car, as we can see Webber there just running wide on the exit of Variante Alta, and he is bearing down on Jenson Button at a huge rate of knots. At this rate he will catch Button. It's going to be extraordinarily close at the end of this Grand Prix. Alonso leading Button by 10 seconds. 18 seconds behind Button at the moment is Michael Schumacher. That gap is evaporating here at Imola.
This is for position. This is Villeneuve passing Webber. Webber makes a mistake. On the way in, he just hangs onto the car, and Villeneuve takes over 7th place. Well, when Michael was about to make his pit stop, I said he was tucked up behind Button. They'll pull him in early. He's not really racing Button and Alonso. They're so far ahead. Well, we need to change that, because the pace he's got, and we saw he put 9.5 seconds worth of fuel in a pit stop, which is every bit as much as anybody else. At this rate of knots, Michael Schumacher will come up and challenge definitely Button and maybe even Alonso at that kind of pace.
That's unbelievable speed. 1:22.6 with a full load of fuel when Alonso's lapping in the low 1:24s. Absolutely astonishing pace from Michael Schumacher. He's keeping it going as well. He's 0.3 of a second faster than them in the first sector and another 0.7 faster in the second sector. So he's already a second faster than the 2 cars in front of him, just after 2 sectors on this lap. This is quite some running by Michael Schumacher here. Just give you a rundown then. Alonso leading, Button 2nd, Michael Schumacher 3rd, Wurz 4th, Sato 5th, Trulli is 6th, 7th is Villeneuve, having made that pass on Mark Webber. So Webber's slipped down then from 4th down to 8th over the course of the last 30 or so laps. A few mistakes here and there for Webber, one in front of Sato, another one in front of Villeneuve, costing him dear when there was a chance of a podium here this afternoon for him. He's now got his teammate Nick Heidfeld behind him. There is Heidfeld with Ralf Schumacher just behind him. Look at that. Michael Schumacher was tucked up behind Ralf Schumacher before that first round of pit stops, and he is now 27 seconds in front of him. That's how much time he made up.
Well, it just shows you also the pain they have in the turbulence, doesn't it? I mean, we were commenting earlier on how he couldn't get within 3/4 of a second of his brother for 20 laps, and all of a sudden he's pulled out that kind of advantage. Slow-mo replay, don't know if this turns into a problem for Michael or just a demonstration of how much movement and how aggressive it is on the transmission, particularly when you launch across those curves with your foot buried on the throttle, particularly at Tamburello, the first chicane. So we've got just over 30 laps to go, and Michael Schumacher at this pace can win this race. Ted is at Ferrari.
Now we may hear from Rubens later with Louise, but it's a problem, electrical problem that they've never had in testing with this Ferrari F2005. Still not reliable.
Yep, Rubens Barrichello out of the Grand Prix. The other high-profile retirements, those of Kimi Raikkonen and Giancarlo Fisichella. So 3 big names out of this Grand Prix. Also, both, Frisaka as well, the Minardi driver, is out, and we're being told that Albers in the other Minardi is retired as well. So both of the Minardis on their Grand Prix debut. The new cars are retiring. It's a shame for the Minardi fan club down here at Tosa Corner. They've come from all over the world, even as far as San Francisco, I'm told, to cheer on the local Faenza-based Minardi team. But at the moment, they're finding something else to cheer about, because this is a demonstration of why Michael Schumacher can never ever be discounted, however bad a mess he makes at qualifying.
Is he ever on it or what? I mean, he was 1.8 seconds quicker than Alonso. I wonder, they'll be on the radio to Alonso now. He's under threat. He doesn't realise it. He's 25 seconds in the lead watching Button. He is under threat from this guy who's just leagues ahead of anybody else. Louise has found Rubens. Maybe he'll know something about this too.
Rubens, it just hasn't happened for you this weekend, has it?
Yeah, no, this weekend was better than the Bahrain one in a way, because it was raining, but it's we still have some other problems that we have to see. Reliability hasn't been very good lately, so I'm disappointed, because the car was good on old tires. That's what I was hoping, that my tire was getting old, so I never got there.
Well, the car is definitely looking brilliant at the moment in the hands of your teammate. He's absolutely flying out there, isn't he?
No, the car is good. I mean, it's a lot of fuel on board, and he's still going very fast, so it's really a pity that we don't have two cars out there.
Thanks, Rubens.
Well, we wondered about a flat-spotted front tyre. We wondered about whether Michael was really motivated right back there, stuck in a long queue. And he obviously just decided not to bother until he had some clear air. He knew he was either going to trip over somebody or was just going to use his tyres up too quickly. He's been biding his time and then unleashed some kind of incredible performance, which he's continuing. Another 1.9 he took out of Alonso's lead that time. Wirtz is making himself a bit of space in fourth place, but already 11 seconds behind third place man Michael Schumacher. The best scrap at the moment, 7th and 8th, Villeneuve and Webber.
Well, just 4 laps ago he was 19 seconds, Michael Schumacher, behind Jenson Button. He's now just 13 seconds behind him, and at this pace he's going to catch him in about 7 or 8 laps time. We've still got 28 to go, and don't forget, another pit stop to come as well. Michael Schumacher, Fernando Alonso and Jenson Button duking it out here at Imola. We saw some fairly tasty lap times from Schumacher on the long runs in free practice, but nothing that suggested that he had 2 seconds a lap in his pocket over the World Championship leader. Absolutely incredible.
That's a fact. I mean, the car's looked good, hasn't it? It's looked on rails from time to time, but not so much on the longer runs, and certainly hasn't looked 2 seconds a lap quicker than anything else.
And remember, he wanted to change his right front tyre, didn't he, after possibly flat spotting it, that lock-up in qualifying and down into the Rivazza. So the FIA not allowing him to change his tyre going into this race. So I don't know if he's getting any vibrations. If he is, they're certainly not slowing him down. Schumacher, half a second per sector at least faster than the 2 cars in front of him. Down the field then, good scrap for 6th place. Once again Jarno Trulli with a queue of cars behind him. Jacques Villeneuve is in that queue, having by far his strongest Grand Prix for the Sauber team, in 7th, ahead of Mark Webber. Pinched that place from him a few laps ago, as we saw. The Ferrari mechanics there just beginning to believe that they can win this race. And certainly if Schumacher can keep this pace going, there's no doubt they're going to win this race. Heidfeld 9th, Ralf Schumacher 10th, Liuzzi 11th, 3 seconds ahead of David Coulthard on that last lap, 3/10 faster than his teammate. So they're playing the long game here this afternoon, just waiting to see who retires from in front of them, because the Red Bull Racings really don't have the pace here this weekend.
Liuzzi and Coulthard still slugging it out, 11th and 12th, pretty soul-destroying back there. Even with 8-point scoring positions now compared to 6 that we used to have. If you're in that position, you think, unless I'm real lucky with unreliability of other drivers, we're going to go home hot, sweaty, tired, frustrated, and with 0 points.
26 laps to go here at Imola, and Michael Schumacher is on the rampage. He's a raging bull here in a car which didn't qualify all that brilliantly because of his mistake. He carried a lot of fuel into this Grand Prix, went further than anybody else, jumped up from 12th to 3rd as a result of staying out longer into the first pit stop. And just look how the crowd is up on its feet, cheering him on every single time he goes through that Tosa bend. They know and they can believe this dream could come true from such an unpromising position. 13th on the grid, Michael Schumacher, if he can keep this going, can win this Grand Prix, can beat Alonso, can beat Button here, because he's lapping 2 seconds a lap faster than the two of them up front. Absolutely extraordinary.
Well, the key thing is, when will he catch Button, and will that hold his progress? He's now just 7.4 seconds adrift. That's barely 3 laps. So Button will not be pitting in the next 3 laps of fuel, I wouldn't imagine. Got a bit longer than that to run. And what have we got here? Is this Massa, I think, having his second Massa and DC for the second time today down into Rivazza 1. The last time Massa lost his nose, this time he just barges Coulthard out of the way and says that's not the first time we've made contact in this corner today. So Massa also pushing, but you've got to assume that Button and Alonso are now fully aware that they're being caught, and therefore that they don't have an answer to Michael Schumacher. And he's got 16 seconds now away from the lead. At the moment, that's just 8 laps, and he'll be there.
Absolutely, he's cut 12 seconds out of Jenson Button's lead in the last 7 laps, so he's absolutely flying. Button has responded though. He's doing the best he can. He was 6/10 faster than Alonso on that last lap, Jenson, a 1:23.8, but that's still 1.2 seconds slower than Michael Schumacher. Button is pushing as hard as he possibly can. There is also the question mark about the longevity of the Bridgestone tyres. We've got both Alonso and Button at the front using the Michelin tyre, which has shown no problems particularly over Grand Prix distances so far this season, but the Bridgestones were looking very, very worn on Rubens Barrichello's car at the end of Bahrain. Here, they've done an awful lot of work for this weekend, and they don't say that they've got any concerns about tyre durability, but it still is definitely a question mark. Ted Kravitz, what can you tell us?
Well, they're not overly concerned down here at BAR. Jenson came on the radio a few laps ago and just asked who was behind him. They told him it was Michael, and I think the feeling is they think Button has the pace to challenge Alonso. They're not playing a defensive game here.
Well, the big scary red monster's behind him, and it's now only 5.3 seconds behind him, albeit tucked up behind the Jordan at the moment. But Michael has got easily the pace at this rate to dispose of Jenson and Alonso too, and his tyres don't exactly look like they're, if you get a close-up shot, the grooves are still very, very visible. Look, you can see from this shot now, you look at the grooves on his rear tyres in particular. Lap, as we said in some piece we did earlier in the weekend, is it's not going around corners that particularly wears your tyres, it's sliding around. If your car's working, it doesn't slide.
Certainly doesn't. Just 5 seconds now, the margin then between Jenson Button and Michael Schumacher. If Button is unconcerned by the progress of Michael Schumacher, he needs to start worrying pretty fast. There you can see the grooves. It's pretty tiny, those tyres. And remember, as we heard at the beginning of this Grand Prix, Ferrari wanted to change the right front tyre of Michael Schumacher. He had that lock-up this morning in the second qualifying session. They weren't allowed to. Doesn't seem to be slowing him down too much, does it?
Well, if I was Jenson now, I'd be feeling like those horrible nightmares you have when you're running down the never-ending tunnel with something relentlessly catching you up. And look, he's going to be in sight, and that'll give him an extra impetus. He'll turn the corner, and look, there he is. That's Button in front of you. And Jenson has responded, is still catching Alonso. The gap down to 9.1 seconds now, but 4.6 seconds behind was Michael Schumacher. 3-4 more laps then, and he's going to be right up. And that could actually be quite crucial now for me, is how long he spends behind or takes to pass Button before Button pits. And you've got to assume Button will have to refuel before Michael Schumacher. Button pitted on lap 24 of this race. Schumacher went to lap 27, and we think they put the similar amount of fuel in, if not even more, in the Ferrari at that stop.
Yeah, it's going to be about 5 laps possibly that Michael Schumacher has clear once if he gets up behind Button before he has to make his own stop. And those laps will be very, very important for Fernando Alonso. That's the time when he's got to consolidate his lead. At the moment, Button is still nibbling away at it. He's got it down to 9.1 seconds, Jenson Button, so he is definitely pushing as hard as he can. Alonso is measuring the situation, but he needs Button to do him a bit of a favour here, because if he's going to retain his lead after the second round of stops, he needs a healthy margin over Michael Schumacher, who clearly has the faster car here this afternoon.
Ragged edge stuff on a green and slightly unknown racetrack. Some great skill unfolding in front of our very eyes. Michael cranks the wheel over and is now just 2.8 seconds behind. Took a second 0.8 out of Jenson on that last lap, and you have to assume Jenson doesn't have an answer.
You have to. It's far too much to be giving away. And this pace from this Ferrari, well, that's more dominant than anything we've seen in the last couple of years.
Ominous is the word I was thinking of for the rest of the season, because it's just blowing the lot of them away. It's incredible.
Well, it is, but of course the thing is, even if he wins here today and Alonso is second, Michael Schumacher is still only taking 2 points out of the Renault driver's 24-point lead over him in the World Championship. So he's going to need some races where Alonso doesn't finish if he's going to get on terms in the World Championship. We've got a long way to go. This was always expected to be one of Ferrari's strongest races of the year, because it has been historically over the years, and particularly for Bridgestone, the tyre manufacturer as well, who didn't look too clever in Bahrain and Malaysia, but they look very clever indeed here at Imola.
Well, if he wins this race, it's got to be right up there with his wet win in Barcelona, or his win stuck in fifth gear in Barcelona, and some of the many other Grand Prix he's won. But this would be quite something exceptional for Michael Schumacher, and you have to say he's on target. Although Alonso's down in the low 1 minute 23s now, that's still not anything like the answer he needs to give. Plenty of brake dust pouring out of the back of that Renault, and the crowd in the grandstands underneath our commentary box on their feet. They're now understanding what's going on. They're sensing a victory here at Imola for Ferrari.
This reminds me of back in 1987, I think it was, at Silverstone. Nigel Mansell chasing down Nelson Piquet at Silverstone in the closing stages. He passed him at Stoke Corner. The crowd was willing him on all the way. When he passed him, the whole place erupted. Here we are in Italy. They want Ferrari to win this Grand Prix, and look at them, they're up on their feet. They're loving every second of this. Schumacher's just a second and a half behind Button. Let's monitor the gap to Alonso as well. Just over 11 seconds Michael is behind Fernando Alonso, with 21 laps of this Grand Prix to go, and everybody has one more stop to make. Ted, what can you tell us?
Just checked in with BAR again. They're still not telling him how close Michael is behind him. They're still giving Jenson the gaps to Alonso, but I think their feeling is that even if Michael does get, or rather when Michael does get right up behind him, he may not be able to pass him, because they're on similar kind of paces.
Well, that may be the case, and I guess as Alonso pits then, so Button will lead the Grand Prix with Schumacher. He was 1.5 seconds adrift. Let's see where he is as Alonso goes into his man-made, or made of men, pit garage. Button goes over the line. The gap 0.9 of a second then now, so he really is under pressure. Clean stop for Fernando Alonso. I think he might be shocked at the end of this second and final round of stops to find himself no longer leading this Grand Prix.
It's distinctly possible. That's a bit too early for Alonso. He wouldn't have wanted to stop as early as that. Fuel prediction says 17 laps, so I don't think that would be any use to him, because there's 20 still to go in this Grand Prix. I think 20 laps of fuel at least is probably a more accurate prediction. He's not going to come in again. But look at this. Michael Schumacher is right up behind Jenson Button, but can he get past him? That's the question. Button's going to have to use all his defensive skills now.
Let's look at the psychology here. Michael needs to kickstart his World Championship. Jenson Button needs to win a Grand Prix. Alonso needs to protect a very healthy lead in the World Championship. So he'd probably rather than stretch his engine or make a mistake, he'd settle for second today rather than no points at all. It's Button's the man who really desperately needs that first Grand Prix victory. But has he got any defence for this flying Ferrari?
Well, I wonder whether Alonso's was a slightly defensive stop as well. It seemed that he's thinking about track position. He wants to get into this final stint, get the rhythm going, and he knows that Schumacher is going to get held up for a while behind Jenson Button. How long will that be? That could be the key to this Grand Prix.
Well, the Ferrari's way better under braking. He's got far more confidence under braking, so that's where he's going to do it with Jenson. Look, we closed up another 20 metres. You were on board, just looking over Michael's front wing, and if he gets a sniff, he's got so much more confidence on the brake pedal.
Well, he's got about 4 or 5 laps before he has to make his stop, Michael Schumacher. Once Jenson Button goes into the pits, he pitted shortly after Alonso last time. Alonso is 11 seconds behind Button and Schumacher at the moment. If he can keep any sort of pace up, it's going to be very, very close between him and Michael Schumacher when Schumacher emerges from his second stop. That's going to be the key to who wins this Grand Prix this afternoon, unless, of course, anything happens between Jenson Button and Michael Schumacher when Schumacher attempts to pass.
See, this is the zone I was telling you about, the moment of how long does Michael stay behind Jenson. They've now dropped straight back into the 1 minute 24, so it's costing Schumacher 2 seconds a lap. This could just let Alonso off the hook, and if he's got track position, then he's got a great chance of somehow keeping the Ferrari at bay. So key area of this Grand Prix going on.
Well, he had an 11-second lead over Michael Schumacher before he made his pit stop, did Fernando Alonso. As you say, if Schumacher isn't able to use that 2 second a lap advantage he had before, then he won't be able to close that down. 18 to go here. Well, they say that what makes a champion is not only superior skill, but superior nerve. And this right now is going to be a great illustration of that. Has Button really got what it takes? And what's got Michael Schumacher got in his locker of tricks?
Surely they'll turn the wick up, give if they've got any left, as they come up to lap David Coulthard. Coulthard just clears quickly out of the way. And there you see, Michael's in that 7/10 zone, the dirty, turbulent air that has worked so hard over the surfaces of that BAR. And as they leave the car that's given Jenson the downforce, they give Michael the turbulence.
They've changed the aerodynamic rules for this year. The front wing has come up, and all the drivers reporting it makes the car much more nervous when you're following another car. 6, 7 tenths of a second, as Martin said, is that zone where once you're there, there's very little you can do. You can't really get any closer because the air doesn't come over your car anymore, and you just go straight on when you get to the corner. So you've got to sit there and think about it, but he's going to have to try and do it under braking somewhere. The people there in their houses, Imola, pretty unique as a racetrack in that people's houses actually overlook the racetrack. They're out on their balcony, they're loving this. The crowd in the grandstand are on their feet. The crowd down at Tosa are on their feet. This is Grand Prix racing at its finest.
Well, there he goes round again, but Alonso doing 24s on his fresh tank of fuel. Button doing 23s, so I think this is letting Alonso off the hook very nicely. Michael almost falling back a little bit now. The Ferrari crew are ready. It must be for Schumacher. Barrichello is out of the race, so he didn't get any more fuel in than Button. Button's gone well here, so Alonso might just be okay.
Well, if Ross Brawn is trying something a bit different, he's certainly got enough fuel, Michael Schumacher, to go on for quite a few laps yet. But Brawn is obviously doesn't want Michael Schumacher to have to pass Button on the racetrack, although we'd all love to see him try.
You can't help but feel they should have pitted Michael as soon as he caught Jenson, and then the pair of them caught some traffic too. You can't help but feel that was the moment to get him in, because he only needs one more stop. They could easily fuel him to the end of the race, and he's struggling to hang on now.
Yeah, but track position is absolutely vital, isn't it? And certainly the way to have done it would be for Michael Schumacher to have got some clear air, put some quick laps in, and then re-emerge from his own late second stop in front of Alonso. Doesn't look like he's going to have that luxury. It does seem as also as that the handling of the Ferrari isn't quite as sweet as it was a few laps ago. Is he going to dive into the pit lane this time? No, he doesn't. Across the Traguardo they go. Painfully slow, 60, 70 miles an hour, picking up the speed then across the start-finish line, 180 miles an hour. The Foxes after the Chickens on the way down to Tamburello, hard on the brakes, 70 miles an hour, 100 through the middle of it, picking up the pace. Schumacher a few car lengths behind Jenson Button, 16 to go here at Imola.
Jenson 9/10 quicker than Alonso on that lap. So where was he? He was about 6 adrift, wasn't he, when Alonso pitted, or was it near a 10? I don't think he's got enough laps and enough of an advantage. Alonso is going just about fast enough to maintain that lead in the low 1 minute 24s. Button in the low 1:23s. It's going to be close. Oh, and there's traffic coming up too, and they're busy squabbling. The two Williams are squabbling for position. They're down in 10th and 11th places. So, and that's going to catch Michael and Jenson out badly. What's happening down there? And Michael takes the position. It's really, really hampered Jenson. The Williams on the grass of Webber. No, you've just got to get out of the way. You're being lapped now, and they do get out of the way. How how badly did that work out for Jenson Button?
But he was looking at the Williams ahead. He was thinking, obviously, about what he was going to do about it. Michael Schumacher sniffed the opportunity and went for it. And the Ferrari mechanics have returned to their pit garage. They no longer need to come out and try this stop because Michael Schumacher has overtaken Jenson Button, and it's game on. And now Alonso is the one who has to be worried because he's 12 seconds behind Michael Schumacher, who has quite a few laps of fuel left in his car. He needs 20 in his pocket to make a stop and rejoin in front of Alonso. Watch Michael Schumacher go.
Well, it worked beautifully for Michael. Wrong-footed Jenson completely. Those squabbling Williams that were being lapped. We didn't really quite see what disadvantaged Jenson at the foot of the hill. But better to be born lucky than rich. It's just the perfect timing for Michael Schumacher. I think the Ferrari boys came out to try to dupe BAR into an earlier stop. But that's freed him up now. How far can he go? Wirtz is pitted from a comfortable 4th place. And I'm expecting now some firework lap times from Michael Schumacher. Interestingly, he was still quicker than Alonso, even passing Button and navigating his way around the 2 Williams.
47 laps into the 4th Grand Prix of 2005, and for the first time this season, Michael Schumacher leads a Formula One Grand Prix. An amazing statistic that tells you the story of how difficult this season has been so far for Schumacher and Ferrari. But now he's got 15 laps to make the difference and to try and win his 7th San Marino Grand Prix, a track that he really can call his own, I think.
21.8, a 1 minute, 21.8 seconds. Button pits from 2nd place. How unfortunate that he caught those back markers. And now that's released Schumacher to have a real go at Alonso. And he's got a chance. Schumacher's got a great chance to win this Grand Prix. Alonso can only manage a 124.3. So that means Schumacher 2.5 seconds quicker on that lap alone.
It all boils down to how much more fuel he's got in the car. If he can do another 3 or 4 laps, he's going to have enough in his pocket to do it at this kind of pace. Amazing run from Michael Schumacher. We'll see the rest of it in a moment.
So let's look at the first sector. Schumacher 0.7 of a second up in just 24. Another 0.7 up in the middle sector over Alonso. It's just hand over fist, isn't it? More traffic coming up. They should clear the way quickly. And Michael Schumacher pits. Schumacher in the pits, then this is the crucial stage. Has he done enough to get ahead of Fernando Alonso?
Well, I don't think he has. He was 14.5 seconds ahead at the end of the last lap. He may have taken a couple of seconds out of him. Alonso comes down to the Traguardo. He comes across the start-finish line. He might have done it, you know, Michael Schumacher. Alonso crosses the start-finish line now. There he is. No, he hasn't. Alonso rejoins in the lead. Schumacher is second. That's just a lap or 2 short for him. And Alonso retains the lead, but we've still got 13 laps to go here. And, well, he's going to have to do it by passing him.
Yeah, well, we know he's faster. They've obviously got exactly the same fuel to the end of the Grand Prix. They're both on used tyres, so it's all about who's got the faster car. And can Michael get through the turbulent air of that Renault? He needed back markers to get him past Button, and Alonso's got a slightly faster car, it has to be said.
Certainly a very good performance by both of them. Alonso's really going to have his work cut out here. But we are now into the final part of this Grand Prix, and how are these tyres going to hold up on both cars? What about the engines? Alonso's engine on its 2nd Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher retired from Bahrain and has a new engine in the back of this Ferrari. That could be a crucial aspect of it as well. 51 of the 62-lap San Marino Grand Prix in Imola. That is the leading two on the racetrack. Fernando Alonso first, Michael Schumacher in second place. And this is how it happened. Michael Schumacher making a pit stop a little earlier than many people had predicted. He didn't have the time on the racetrack then in order to put in the storming laps that we expected. It was a tidy enough stop from Schumacher, but you can see that as he came down the pit lane, look at the right of your screens, that's Fernando Alonso, and he was able to retake the lead, Schumacher tucking in behind him. So Schumacher is in front of Button. He's a long way in front of Button, 11 seconds, but he's got Fernando Alonso to contend with. World Championship leader, 24 points ahead of him in the World Championship. Schumacher said going into this weekend, I've got nothing to lose, I have to go for it. Alonso must drive like the man leading the World Championship and think about it. There was some reverse psychology as well from Alonso. He said, well, Schumacher is the favourite this weekend, and you'd have to say the way this car is performing, he absolutely is. Who's to say that Schumacher isn't going to put a run on the Spaniard?
And is the Spaniard going to defend that hard? He knows he's got to think of the World Championship. Michael's got the faster car, so much better under braking. Although he took a while, he needed back markers to help him pass Button due to the turbulence. But he's looking very racy, isn't he? How hard does Alonso want to be looking in his mirrors and making a mistake or something? He needs 8 points more than he needs the win.
And that will be going through the mind of the 7 times world champion Michael Schumacher, because there have been occasions in his very long career when he's had to drive percentages rather than go for broke. Not too many of them, because going for broke is pretty much the Schumacher trademark. But here, the intelligence of Alonso, what's he going to do? The racer in him is desperate to take him on. He knows he's got a slower car. He knows Schumacher's going to have a run at him sooner or later. How hard will he defend?
Trying to see where it's most likely to be. I mean, Alonso looks quite good in the top chicane as long as he doesn't make a mistake. Button's now a dozen seconds behind this squabble, and it looks like Michael is much later on the brakes down into Ribazza, but that's risky. I think he's just got to stay close out of the final chicane, get in the slipstream and stay left down into Tamburello, the first chicane. And will it be this time? I think this is not necessarily this time, but I think this is where it's going to happen, and definitely not this time. In fact, that Renault pulled very nicely out of the corner, didn't it? Very nicely indeed. This is going to be tough for Michael. He's got to almost force Alonso into an error or try and pin him up against a back marker as he did Jenson Button.
The old champion, he's not that old really, is he? Only 36 years of age, but he's done it all, won it all against the man trying to take his crown off him, trying to win a world championship while Michael Schumacher is still racing. He's certainly got a big head start in the points. Whatever happens here, Alonso will lead the world championship going to Barcelona in 2 weeks' time, which is a total sellout, by the way. The Spanish fans really embracing Formula One now that they've got a man at the forefront of it. So whatever happens here, Alonso will be leading. But it's old versus new out on the racetrack here. Schumacher just observing what the young guy's doing.
I tell you what, that Renault, just like last year, has got great torque and and good traction control, and he's pulling 10 metres out of Michael, a car length and a half out of the slower corners, and Michael then grabbing it all back under braking. But this is a supreme amount of pressure for the young Spaniard. Ted has some news about him.
Yeah, Renault are keeping Alonso fully informed, both of the gap to Michael and of how many laps he's got left. The Renault has got much better traction than the Ferrari, well, slightly better traction than the Ferrari, but can he hold on?
Well, you can see this is the corner Martin's been talking about. You need to stay over the right for the best line, but you need to also stay to the left for the defensive line. At the moment, Alonso doesn't feel he needs to do that. Schumacher not close enough to him out of the Traguardo. This is where Schumacher really closes up on him.
Yeah, and maybe I'm now beginning to think, given the talk of that Renault, that into Tozer's Michael's best shot with a big dive up the inside of this hairpin. But once again, the talk of the Renault, but that now looks like Michael's strongest suit, doesn't it? Because he can't match the Renault's torque and traction. And Alonso going very, very conservative on the way in and very protective. And that's given Michael the run down the outside, but there's no way through there. But Fernando just got a little bit overprotective and really scupping his exit speed out of Piratella. He's clear now into Variante Alta.
Schumacher trying very hard here. He's trying to make Alonso make a mistake. He's trying to get alongside him, racing for the win here at San Marino. Absolutely thrilling stuff here. Clearly Schumacher has the faster car on the day. Renault will go away from this Grand Prix and look at the developments they need to bring onto the car, because this Ferrari looks immensely quick, and if he can carry on going at this sort of speed, who knows, he might well win the World Championship, Michael Schumacher, this year. But everybody needs to respond to what they've seen here today, because this Ferrari is incredibly fast. But what about Schumacher this time on the way down to Tamburelli? Is he thinking, as Martin is, that Tosa will be the place to do it? The 60-mile-an-hour left-handed Tosa corner.
Well, they've now dropped into the 125s. That's how defensive Fernando Alonso feels he needs to go to keep Michael away in the braking zones and just to out-accelerate him. But this is where Schumacher is really fast, but the camera angle foreshortens the gap there. But I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Michael have a real stab up the inside there. And this time Alonso does not need to look in his mirrors. He can take the normal line. But his car's not good on the way into Piratella either.
Just 8 laps to go here at San Marino. Who's going to win this Grand Prix? We said it was wide open going into it. It's certainly between these two now. Jenson Button's been dropped. He's 10 seconds behind this scrap that we are thoroughly enjoying here at Imola. Now Liuzzi might come into the picture. He's the next back marker they're going to catch. He's a few seconds up the road, but they will catch him in the not too distant future. Let's hope he doesn't play a part in the outcome of this Grand Prix on his Grand Prix debut. There he is, flashing across the bottom of frame. Hope he keeps well and truly out of the way. This will be the end of the lap, and there'll be just 7 to go. And Michael Schumacher, is he going to try it or isn't he? You can't believe he won't try it.
Just got to get a sniff first though, hasn't he, really? And he's so much faster. Both again in the 24s, so that's 2 seconds a lap Michael's losing in, with basically Fernando Alonso's way. All Alonso's got to do is make sure he doesn't outbrake himself anywhere, doesn't make that critical error on the way into the corner, because Michael hasn't got enough torque and traction to out-accelerate him. But here we go then, down, he's closer than ever down into Tosa, but not close enough.
Nobody is in their seats here at Imola. Everybody is standing up down at Tosa in the grandstands below us as well. Absolutely thrilled by this battle. The cheering, the air horns are going. They're loving every moment of this. Just 7 to go for Alonso. It'll feel like Chinese water torture to him. Can he get it to the finish in front of the great champion?
You have to think that Fernando will jump out of the way if Michael sends him a bit of a chancy one. But he's just making sure Michael doesn't get close enough. Supreme pressure, and Michael psychologically has been trying to pressure this young man ever since he took a comfortable lead in the championship, and this is a big telling point. This is telling us so much about Alonso now.
It's the state of play in 2005 in the early part of this championship. It was all about Alonso. It still is at the moment. This is where Michael came wanting to nick it back, to put the spotlight on himself, to start his World Championship charge. Kimi Raikkonen felt the same way, but unfortunately he has had to retire from this Grand Prix whilst leading it in the early stages. So now it's just between these two.
Traffic coming up, sorry James, traffic coming up. And you always lose out when you're the first of a pair or a string of cars. You always seem to lose out when you first come up against the traffic. You seem to be the one cutting the path and surprising everybody. And that's Alonso's job, of course, now. He'll be coming up to the back markers. They should be getting lots of blue flags, and hopefully they'll see this epic battle coming up behind them.
Well, before we reach them, let me quickly give you an update what's going on behind. Button is 3rd, Wirtz is 4th. That's terrific for him in the McLaren on his Grand Prix debut for the team. Sato is 5th. Villeneuve is 6th for Sauber. So there's a lot of good stories throughout the field. Not surprisingly, the director has stayed with this tremendous scrap at the front. And Schumacher once again looking around the outside, but not close enough into the Variante Alta, breaking from 180 miles an hour just down to 70 to actually get a difficult corner for a lot of people. But the pressure on Alonso with having Schumacher right behind him is immense.
Well, if that engine was a little bit sick on Alonso's car, it's gone very nicely so far. Will they have to turn the wick up to make sure they can keep Schumacher behind them? And it's pretty much status quo though right now, so Michael really can't find it. Oh, he's very close though that time out of the final corner. And he's about coming past our window, 4 or 5 car lengths adrift though. Once again, the torque and the pure acceleration of that Renault giving Alonso the breathing space he needs.
Lots of brake dust coming out of both cars. A very difficult circuit on brakes, Imola. You can see it coming out of the Renault, and he brakes for the Rivazza in particular. Schumacher, a huge amount of brake dust coming out of his discs at Tamburello. Flavio Briatore there, the boss of Renault, is enjoying this one. That's the back markers. We want them to get well and truly out of the way. Liuzzi is the first one, and Webber in front of him.
What a pity Raikkonen's not in this as well, because I think he could easily have been so had he not have had a mechanical problem on the McLaren, because, well, in fact, he may have been ahead of this little scrap, but could well have been right in the middle of it. Unfortunately, Jensen is no longer. He's now 11.9 behind Michael Schumacher. But a very solid fourth. Sato in the second, BAR fifth, Villeneuve sixth, Trulli seventh, Ralf Schumacher eighth, Heidfeld ninth, Webber in the second, Williams 10th. Both Williams out of the points at the moment.
Yeah, Button looks like he's settled for third place. He's 12 seconds behind this battle, but a comfortable 18 ahead of Wirtz, who's in fourth place. So apart from Ralf Schumacher possibly passing his teammate Jarno Trulli for seventh, there are no other significant battles on the racetrack in the points paying positions at least. And this is the sole focus of the final part of this Grand Prix.
See, Liuzzi and Massa in front of them. Now that Alonso basically has pegged the pace, they're not much quicker than those two back markers. They've not really caught them, have they? Liuzzi's doing sort of 20, he did 25 that time around actually, but so did Alonso and so did Michael Schumacher, so they've not really quite caught that pack as much as I thought they would.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Schumacher keeps showing himself, having a little bit of a look. I wonder how much is left in the tyres of both men, how much is left in the engines of both men.
I think Michael, I don't think he's biding his time, but I think he's now worked out it's not going to be easy to pass the Renault. He'll wait and see if he can tuck him up behind a back marker. If not, he might be having a banzai or two on the last lap or two. Stay very much tuned to this Grand Prix.
Indeed, there's Liuzzi. Blue flags being waved for him. He's been told that the race leader is coming through with the second place man right behind him. This is where Jenson Button got caught out behind the two Williams. But no such problems for Alonso. Hopefully Liuzzi will start to back off fairly soon, because Alonso doesn't really want to catch him into the Rivazza. Very slow section, he's going to catch him into the Rivazza. On the exit of it possibly, certainly across the start-finish line. It's going to be only a matter of time before they catch up with that Red Bull racing car. And Schumacher's positioning himself, look.
Alonso was slow out of second Rivazza. His car's not good in second Rivazza and Piratella, which is a little bit, the car's just too pointy there. Over the line he goes, 0.4 of a second ahead of Michael Schumacher.
Well, they haven't caught Liuzzi as quick as I thought they were going to. Lots of sand on the outside. Schumacher getting a face full of it from Alonso. We got very close to him there into Tosa, and you can see that the Renault is really struggling there. There's Jean Todt, the boss of the Ferrari team, Ross Brawn alongside him. Remember, they made a slight tactical switch, bring him in. Michael Schumacher has another look. He's so much faster, isn't he, than the Renault? Just needs to try and force him into some kind of mistake.
Well, Michael's taking very unconventional lines now to try to distract Alonso. He's now putting his car in very unusual positions, and Alonso will not be anything other than wondering where he is and what he's up to.
That's a tactic, I'm sure, from their kart racing days. Both of them outstanding kart racers. Just look how slow the Renault is to that first part of the Rivazza in comparison with the Ferrari. So much slower. Schumacher really tucked up neatly behind the Renault now. They're coming across the start-finish line once again. This will be just 2 laps to go here for a real grandstand finish at Imola. And this time he's nicely tucked up. Can he have a go this time? No, once again the traction of the Renault is enough to keep Alonso in front.
Still Michael, he has a feint down the inside. He's just desperately trying to get Alonso to miss his braking point, and it was Michael that disadvantaged himself that time, but he'll very quickly catch him back up again. And Alonso having to drive so defensively, the car just not underneath him at all at the moment.
Well, if it's going to be Tosa, he's only got one more opportunity. If it's going to be Variante Alta, which they're approaching now, he's got a couple more opportunities. This is just 2 laps to go. Alonso takes the defensive line into the Variante Alta. It won't be here. What about the Rivazza going downhill? Schumacher close then on the exit of Variante Alta. There's Niuzzi up in front. Schumacher right in the slipstream of Alonso as they go down the hill. No chance really here to have a run at him. This is where the Renault is at its slowest, and we are about to start the last lap with Fernando Alonso and Michael Schumacher absolutely glued together on the racetrack. The last lap of the San Marino Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher has one more lap, just 3 miles in which to find a passing place on Fernando Alonso. It's been an absolutely thrilling conclusion to this 25th San Marino Grand Prix. Schumacher undoubtedly has the faster car, as he showed earlier in the race when he went from 12th to 3rd just by putting the hammer down. But Alonso's reacted well. Schumacher has a look at him into Tosa. This is the last time they'll go through this corner, but Alonso once again, as he has all the way through, brilliant on the defence.
Now Michael will just charge at Piratella. He's putting his car in very unconventional positions, trying to distract Alonso. But every time he does that and it doesn't work, it puts him another car length or 2 behind. So Schumacher then, his final chance, I think, is into the first Rivazza. He's got to just launch it across these curves in Variante Alta and get somewhere near the back of the Renault, and he'll send one down the inside, but he's gone wide himself. So Schumacher's still 3 or 4 car lengths adrift. Can he? It's too far back, I think it is, to have a run at him down the inside. Alonso's car's painfully slow in Rivazza 1. Going to leave him exposed into the final chicane, but he's got enough torque to give himself a car length spare. Will Michael have a go into the final corner? He's too far behind.
He's not going to. He locks the breakdown. Amazing defensive driving by Fernando Alonso. His hand is out of the cockpit. Across the line they go. One of the closest finishes I can remember for many, many years. What a thrilling end to the Grand Prix. In the end, Schumacher didn't have a lunge. He was thinking about the championship as well. It might well have taken Alonso out if they'd hit each other, but he had just as much to lose as Alonso did. An absolutely brilliant climax to a completely unpredictable Grand Prix here at Imola. Without doubt, the finest race of the season so far.
3 fingers up. That's a hat-trick for Fernando Alonso, and it'll not come under any more pressure than that. He made it stick. Just that time that Michael Schumacher took to get past Button, and he was lucky to get past Button in the end, who finishes 3rd, by the way. Wirtz 4th, Sato 5th. Villeneuve was a minute behind the leaders. He's about to take a very, very solid 6th place. Trulli 7th, and Ralf Schumacher will be 8th. The 2 Toyotas then scoring points. But wow, what a great drive. But he was just tiptoeing into Rivazza at the end, wasn't he? Really struggling.
Everybody buzzing here at Imola. Fernando Alonso takes his 4th career victory, as Martin said, his 3rd in a row in the 2005 season. And well, he'll be taking the World Championship lead and a hat-trick to the next Grand Prix in Barcelona in 2 weeks' time. But Formula One will be taking a crest of a wave into the next Grand Prix, because that was a thriller. Michael Schumacher, some consolation for him. He's now got 10 World Championship points to the 36 of Fernando Alonso, and it will be his 100th podium at the wheel of a Ferrari, which is a historic moment. We'll enjoy that podium in just a moment. Well, he certainly wants to make his point, doesn't he? He's had 3 fingers up in the air for, well, half a lap really at very low speed, and I think everyone is aware now that he's won 3 races in a row. Michael Schumacher, I wonder what he's thinking. No wonder the Ferrari people were kicking themselves after he made that mistake in qualifying. They had a very quick car here this weekend. Sportingly, all the marshals waving flags, congratulating the race winner. He's thoroughly deserved that.
What the crowds are going to be like in Barcelona for the next Grand Prix. It's going to be absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it'll be very difficult to get in and out. I think I might pitch a tent on the inside, because there'll be no getting in and no getting out at the end of it all. There you can see a rundown of the top 10. What about Mark Webber, 4th on the grid, and in the early stages ends up finishing out of the points, both the Williams, and behind teammate Heidfeld. A couple of mistakes from Webber we saw along the way. Liuzzi on his Grand Prix debut finishes with a car between himself and his experienced teammate David Coulthard. He'll be very pleased with that. The Red Bull Racing cars really not at the races this weekend. Everybody else seems to have taken a step forward. How about the Toyotas? Well, once again, both of them in the points. Trulli 7th, Ralf Schumacher in 8th place. And here another look at that last chicane. The pass that never was. Just looking back at it from Alonso's perspective, sometimes that Ferrari was so close to him.
Who had Liuzzi right up behind him at the end. A great drive on his debut from Liuzzi. And then
welcome back to Imola, where we're still getting our breath back after an amazing conclusion to the Grand Prix. Schumacher smiling now. He didn't get past Alonso in the end. Fernando Alonso has won his 3rd Grand Prix in a row. Herbie Blasch there just congratulating Michael on a heroic performance. He went from 13th in the early stages behind his brother Ralph, jumped up to 3rd by running a little bit longer into the first round of pit stops. The early running in this Grand Prix, though, totally dominated by Kimi Raikkonen, who retired early on with a technical failure. He too would surely have been in the mix and possibly winning this race in front of Alonso. Alonso inherited the lead then from Raikkonen, with Button some distance behind him. Button tried hard, did the best he could. He finished 3rd here this afternoon, and in the closing stages it was all about the battle between Alonso, whose tyres aren't as bad as they look there. He's picked up a lot of bits and pieces from the side of the circuit. That's how close it was at the finish, though. Michael Schumacher picks up 8 points that are absolutely vital to get his championship on the move, but the bad news for him is that Alonso picked up another 10. He now has 36 points in the championship, and well, it's game on. But we've seen enough today, Martin, to suggest that Ferrari is going to win a lot of races in the rest of this season.
Yes, if he'd have started in his correct grid slot, surely Michael Schumacher would have won this race. It would have been interesting to see just how honest Raikkonen could have kept him, because he scampered away, didn't he, at the beginning of the race quite comfortably, although Alonso did take him after 5 or 6 laps from in 2nd place. But yeah, ominous, as I think I said during the commentary, that Ferrari just was so incredibly fast. And we haven't, and they're looking glued on brand new tyres. We haven't really seen that kind of pace, have we? What they've done, they must have changed and just found a peach of a setup for the race.
Well, this has always been a good track for them, but at times, that magical time in the middle of the race when Schumacher was making that jump, as all the cars in a train behind Jarno Trulli, who was 3rd at the time. There's a whole bunch of them all stacked up in midfield, and Schumacher passed a lot of them as they all came in for their pit stop. He was going 2 seconds a lap faster than Alonso and Button during that phase of the Grand Prix.
I wonder if Mark Webber had some kind of problem. He did fall down the field and ended up a dozen seconds behind Heidfeld. So Alonso then, he's had a 3rd, a 1st, a 1st, and now this.
morte dello sport, consegna il trofeo al vincitore Fernando Alonso. The trophy presented by Richard Gibb, Managing Director of Foster's Europe. E per quanto riguarda la casa costruttrice vincitrice, Renault, viene consegnato il trofeo da Richard Gibb, Manager Generale della Foster Europe. To the second place driver, Michael Schumacher, the trophy presented by Well done, gentlemen, and as the podium party, the champagne!
Congratulations to the three podium finishers after a stunning Foster's Grand Prix of San Marino. Third for Lucky Strike BAR Honda, Jenson Button. Second and scoring his 100th podium finish for Scuderia Ferrari Marlboro, Michael Schumacher. And scoring a hat-trick of wins and 4 in a row for Mild 7 Renault, Fernando Alonso. Fernando, really, it's over to you. What an absolutely blistering last 12 laps of the race. Michael Schumacher, 1.5 seconds behind you as he came out from that last pit stop. Take us through the closing stages.
Yeah, it was probably one of the best fights I had. I knew that Michael was more than 1 second faster than me, so my only chance was to hold him up a little bit in the middle of the corner, and then to be in the throttle a little bit earlier than him, just to have this little space for the straights. And it works well. We had 2 or 3 corners that we were very, very close. But I was doing my maximum. The tires and the car was not performing perfectly, and I knew that.
In the very closing stages of the race, you were quite close to slower traffic in front of you, and it looked as if you were about matching their pace, perhaps staying back from the traffic.
Yes, the last 10 laps, I had the Red Bull and the Williams in front, and I was hoping not to catch them, because maybe I lose a little bit of downforce, and Michael was able to overtake me. So in the really slow chicanes and in the slow corners, I was braking more than normal, maybe, just to protect my rear tires and just to keep the gap if it was possible.
Was there ever a moment when a small voice said in your mind, settle for second place, don't make a race of this, you're leading the championship?
No. Always I was hoping for the win. After Kimi retired, I had only one picture for the race, that I was winning the race, so I was ready to fight for the last laps. I really want the victory here.
Well, congratulations, a fantastic victory. Michael, what a day, really. Over to you as well. From 13th on the grid, obviously slowed down a lot in the early stages in traffic there, but once they came in for their earlier pit stops, you had a much longer first stint there. The race became yours.
Yeah, indeed. That was obviously the strategy, due to the weather condition and position we had been after yesterday's qualifying. I'm not sure if I should be, I'll put it this way, I'm happy in one way for the race. I'm obviously quite excited. I'm naturally on the other side a bit disappointed to what happened to me this morning. I mean, if you think through what would have happened if this didn't happen, it would have been the perfect day for us. But here you go. We got a second place. We had a stunning pace and performance. That's what we take out of this race after a tremendous effort and work from everybody within the team. Test team, engineers, test drivers, Luca Balovea, Marc Genet. Everybody was just flat out working and on the limiter, and it paid out. And I have to say a big thank you as well to Bridgestone, who have suffered in the first stage of the season from some publicity, and I think they get back some very good one pretty soon. This was the first step, and I think there's some more to come.
Well, a very eventful race for you, of course, but perhaps you could, without wanting to open a wound, just talk us through what did happen this morning when you went wide at Ravazza there.
Basically something similar what happened to me on Friday during free practice. There is a little bump into this corner, and due to the fact that we have heavier fuel load, we brake a bit earlier. And I just hit this bump heavy enough that the front wheel got unloaded, and it's maximum brake pressure you be on, and it just locked up. And once it is locked, then you're just lost. I mean, you can't really recover. But I don't think that's an excuse. That's just the facts, and I'm just disappointed that it did happen to me. I mean, in one way, I should be saying I should be not too worried because I don't do too many of those mistakes. But one is enough, and it's a sad one.
You passed Jensen in a very spectacular fashion at the top of the hill at the Variante Alto. What did you have any thoughts about Fernando in those closing stages? Were you looking at a specific place or just waiting for an opportunity?
I mean, I was a little bit helped by the two Williams guys who did I don't know what they did to each other into Aqua Minerale, put some dust on the circuit at the same stage, and Jensen just slipped on that dust, which gave me the run at him. Otherwise, I don't think it would have been possible. With Fernando, it was slightly different because he struggled with his performance in a way, and he wasn't that quick anymore. on the acceleration areas. And I had a couple of areas where I thought I could have had a go, but it was just a little bit not enough to finally do it. I tried. We got very close in a couple of corners. But, he did a great race, and he didn't do mistakes, and that's why he won the race and I got second.
You drove a great race too. Jensen, switching to you. Great to be on the podium for Lucky Strike BAR Honda finally.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a tough few races for us already this season. But it's the same sort of situation Michael's been in. We've all worked so hard since the last race to turn things around. And we have, we're not yet on the same pace as the Ferrari, but, they've done a fantastic job. I know they've been working night and day to turn this car around, and I'd just like to say thank you to them because it's a different car, and I'm very positive that we can keep making these improvements throughout the year.
How did your pace in the race early on compare with Fernando's?
We were suffering a little bit with higher fuel loads. When the fuel load got a bit lower, we were very competitive. I don't know if Alonso was slowing down, but I was able to catch him a little bit towards the end of the stints. But as soon as we put the fuel back in, we were struggling again. But it doesn't matter anymore. I'm very happy to be here on the podium. We've got so much information from this race, the first race we finished this year. So it's great to be back on the podium, and I think that we are going to be strong when we arrive in Barcelona.
Congratulations, Jensen. Just returning to you, Fernando. Pressure doesn't get any greater than it was today, but nonetheless, the Spanish Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time is going to be a serious event.
Yeah, after 3 victories, maybe it's arriving with a very strong point for me in the championship, and I hope the people enjoy the race. I know that the atmosphere will be amazing and will be completely full from Friday to Sunday. And as I said before, I think we arrive in a good moment for the team and for me, and hopefully we can finish the race. And I'm sure that with the performance we have, can be a podium again. So I really hope good weather there, big party for everybody.
Congratulations again. Now, if we could have some words from you in Spanish.
Ha sido la tercera victoria y fantástico, quitar la que más me ha gustado y he saboreado, porque teníamos muchos problemas en el coche todo el fin de semana y bueno, he tenido que aguantar el motor, aguantar los neumáticos y luego al final pues con Michael estuvo muy cerca de arrebatarme la victoria. Sabía lo que tenía que hacer, sabía las curvas que él tenía oportunidades y en la curva anterior pues intentaba frenarlo un poquito y no acercarme tampoco a los 2 doblados que teníamos delante, y esa era la llave para conseguir la victoria, que así fue. Y nada, quiero dedicar esta victoria a todas las banderas españolas que hubo aquí en este Gran Premio, especialmente a Ale y Irene que vinieron aquí de viaje de novios.
Thank you. Michael, in German.
Auf der einen Seite sollte ich sicherlich sehr zufrieden sein über das Rennen, das bin ich sicherlich auch. Auf der anderen Seite ärgert es mich natürlich schon ein bisschen, wenn man bedenkt, was hätte sein können, wenn das heute Morgen nicht passiert wäre, das Missgeschick. Nichtsdestotrotz ist es ein sehr positives Rennen für uns gewesen, für die Motivation, für die Stimmung in der gesamten Mannschaft, im gesamten Team, die alle, glaube ich, schon sehr zufrieden sind mit dem Ausgang dann letzten Endes. Und für die harte Arbeit, die jeder bei uns im Team geleistet hat, glaube ich, schon belohnt worden sind heute. Als Botschafter von San Marino bin ich natürlich auch extrem glücklich, dass das in der Hinsicht wieder ein guter Grand Prix für mich geworden ist, nach all dem, und möchte einfach nur ein großes Dankeschön sagen an alle, die das wieder so hinbekommen haben, dass wir wieder konkurrenzfähig sind. Danke, Jungs.
Thank you and congratulations.